With Season 5 of Better Call Saul now over, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered in the sixth and final season. Most of the questions are how stuff happens rather than what happens. We know that Kim is not in the picture in Breaking Bad. The same thing is true for Nacho and Lalo. So how are these characters going to be taken out of the Albuquerque world? Apart from those three, Mike seems to have found his place. We still have the situation with Nacho's father, and we know Mike wants to help out there, but apart from that, I don't think we're going to see much change with him. Mike is certainly a little bit more arrogant in Breaking Bad and a bit more submissive to Gus, so maybe we'll see him numb to the violence with more and more experience, but for the most part, his arc seems to be finished. In regards to Jimmy, he is still far from the man who's advocating assassinations to Walter White in Breaking Bad, and we know this transition is tied to Kim's fate. The question really becomes, is it their relationship that falls apart, or is Kim killed? I'll save that question for last because I think it's the most compelling. I'm going to start off with my prediction on the fate of Mr. Nacho Varga. Nacho has been a great character. I've been a big fan of Michael Mondo since Far Cry 3. He seems like a really cool guy. Sadly, I don't think he'll survive Lalo's wrath in Season 6. If you think about it, Lalo was his number one ally. He probably trusted Nacho more than anybody, and he was even advocating for his promotion in the cartel. If I was Nacho, I would have come clean to Lalo at some point and tell him the situation with Gus and trust that Lalo would be able to take care of Gus and spare his father. Lalo is probably just as intelligent as Gus is, and I think if he had Nacho on his side, he probably would have won the battle. There is a chance that Lalo would kill Nacho if he came clean, but honestly, I wouldn't bet on that result. If you take away the murder of the Travel Wire employee, there isn't too much evidence that Lalo is a intensely brutal person. And to take down Gus, I think he would have forgave Nacho if he came clean. Obviously, after what happened at the compound, that option is completely off the table, and Nacho was probably the first person on Lalo's hit list. He trusted Nacho to take his position in America, he invited him into his home, and was overall pretty good to him, and then Nacho betrayed him, which led to the death of his innocent friends. If I was in Lalo's position, Nacho would be the number one target as well. I do think that Nacho will save his father, which will sort of serve as his redemption, but if you think about it, he made Tuco a prisoner, he made Hector a vegetable. He isn't going to survive another Salamanca, especially Lalo, who is clearly the most intelligent and most dangerous of everybody in the family. So how will Gus end up getting the better of Lalo? If you look at the players on both sides, Gus clearly has the advantage. Nacho has to be on Gus's side now. He also has Mike, Victor, Tyrus, and the support of Bolsa. Lalo really only has the cousins, who are a big weapon, obviously, and I wouldn't say the support of Eladio, but I don't think Eladio is going to get in his way. Eladio has always been okay with his underlings fighting, as long as the money keeps flowing. One question mark is Tuco, who we know is going to be out of prison within 10 months. I'm not sure the timeline will stretch that far, but Tuco's involvement would make things very interesting. We know that Tuco ends up in Nacho's position by the time Walter White enters the picture, so he either falls into that position following the wreckage, or plays a part in creating that wreckage. I also wouldn't be surprised if Lydia plays a role in Lalo's fall. We know that Mike despises Lydia when she enters the picture in Breaking Bad, so I suspect her methods for handling Lalo, who she wanted to murder in prison, are going to be pretty extreme, and Mike is going to have a problem with that. So this is my best guess of what's going to transpire. Out of rage, I think we're going to see Lalo ruthlessly attack Gus's operation. Dealers will be killed, supply trucks will be bombed, probably by the cousins, and Gus will take a hit in that respect, but Balsa is already on Gus's side and doesn't want to see his operation halted. Once Eladio starts to bleed money, Balsa will have more leeway in convincing his boss that Lalo is a problem that needs to be dealt with. Now, they can't just go and assassinate Lalo because of his family name, but I think they'll sign off on a Gus-led operation, which will set up his murder and make it look like it was a result of some mistake made by Lalo, which might not be that difficult, because revenge can make smart men very irrational, and Lalo might not think all of his decisions through before he does them. Again, I don't think Nacho survives this war, and we might even see one of Gus's men get incapacitated for a little while, but as we know, Hector is the last Salamanca alive in Breaking Bad, so Lalo is not going to survive the final season. Now on to Kim and Jimmy, who are the two big question marks going into the show's final season. We end Season 5 with Kim drifting towards Jimmy's moral code, and again, I think that's an adaptation of hers to stay with Jimmy. A viewer also made a good point about her past. I think there's a good shot we learn more about Kim's family and how it has affected her. We know that she used to move from place to place all the time and her mother was an alcoholic, but there may be more to that story that explains her dedication to Jimmy despite his insane behavior. So will Kim survive season 6? I don't think she will. Now, I would love to have a series finale of Better Call Saul where it's just a Gene episode and Jimmy reconnects with Kim, but I don't see that happening. That would almost feel a little bit too perfect. He might interact with the symbol of Kim and remember the great person she was and how she tried to make him a better man, but I don't think we're going to see her in black and white. I also don't believe we know everything about Jimmy and Chuck's relationship. I wouldn't be surprised if they put that in a scene in black and white. The most obvious cause of death would be Lalo. He is definitely not done with Kim and Jimmy. He's going to return to them for details on what happened in the desert, but apart from that, I'm not exactly sure how Lalo is going to interact with them. What I'm fairly certain will happen at some point is Kim and Jimmy are going to get in trouble with the law. The marriage benefit of not needing to testify against your spouse, that's going to be utilized at some point. Maybe they get caught trying to destroy Howard and HHM, and maybe Kim ends up in more trouble than Jimmy. I could definitely see something like that. I also don't see Kim going the way of the vacuum. She just does not seem like a person who'd go that route. She thinks she can talk herself out of any problem, which she's mostly been able to do to this point. Her death would be all the explanation needed for why Saul is what he is in Breaking Bad, because make no mistake, he is a bad guy. He seems pretty good next to Heisenberg, but early on, it was Saul who was casually recommending the killing of Badger. To go from where Jimmy is now to that, I can't see Kim still being alive. Unless she completely turns on him and breaks his heart, but the way she has molded herself to stay with him, that'd be shocking. A few bonus predictions. I think we're going to hear the name Captain Cook go around at some point. I don't think we're going to actually see Jesse, but I think there is a great chance we're going to get a scene with Walter. We already have a Breaking Bad era opening in Better Call Saul, and I think we're going to get another one with Walter where Saul is telling a story of his life or something like that. That might be a little bit fan servicey, but nearly every character in Better Call Saul is impacted by Walter's awakening, so I do think it's sort of important to include him somehow. Something that's been in my mind recently, between Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and El Camino, if you consider it one big overarching story, who would be considered the main character? Because Saul is going to end up with the most screen time, Jesse has a whole movie dedicated to himself. For me, it still feels like everything revolves around Walter's entrance into the world and his evolution, but it's strange to think that we probably know more about Jimmy McGill and Jesse Pinkman as a whole than Walter White. I know that's sort of a random tangent, but I think it's kind of interesting to think about. Anyways, those are my thoughts on how Season 6 will conclude. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm sure I'll end up being completely wrong about probably everything, but it's kind of fun to come up with ideas and try to rationalize them. So subscribe if you're interested in more film and TV content. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and hopefully I will talk to you soon. Have a good one.